And we're back again with my esteemed colleague, my whiskey companion, my friend from the ages, and the day is today. And you know what the day is today? Are you drinking out of a presidential mug? How dare you insult
It
us?
it says the Department of Dad.
It's like FBI, Federal Body Inspector.
Eh,
Yes, I will inspect you. Let's all talk about the. Isn't that
uh,
canceled yet? Federal Body Inspector? Because I mean, you're basically like, it's like pulling out a badge and saying, I'm a cop, so I get to cut in front of traffic. It's like when you see an ambulance at a four-way stop and they turn on their lights just to go through before everybody else. And you're like, I don't even care if somebody's dying. That's not the proper etiquette of how this works. I got here first and I hit the stop line and then you go.
I feel like if somebody is in fact dying, though, they should probably take precedent and priority. But yeah, when they're just doing it to roll through, then yeah, they're assholes.
There's a dude in the back of the ambulance like, hey, we weren't first. We weren't first. I don't care if I have a bullet in my head right now. Let it's right. It's the privilege. It's the idea that you have to follow the rules because without rules, there are no societies. And today, I like to do this new thing I'm going to start doing with you now. Only you, because we always get into the deep political talks and all these other types of things of what's going on in society and why the world is going down into dog shit world, I would say. But checking Twitter for and look, just so everybody listening, Ian never knows what he's going to get when he comes onto the show, and it's always a surprise for him, like Christmas. Um, but checking Twitter, I checked it the trending hashtags. I was like, what's trending right now? Because just like a couple weeks ago, there was cancel culture was trending. Guess what is trending? Why we are recording today?
It surprised me.
Delete
I,
Facebook.
delete Facebook.
So now, all right. So Australia has basically banned Google platform. And that all boils down to the fact that if you typed in a video result on Google or something, let's say Ian smokes crack, and it's like we just type that in on the internet, okay? There'll be YouTube results and all these other things before other actual results from other companies, such as like DuckDuckGo is a good source. We talked about that on your podcast.
Yep.
DuckDuckGo is a different search engine. It'll show you every result of everything before, I guess, like if you typed it into Google, they're going to give you YouTube's results first because YouTube and Google are paid partnerships. They are together. So they're going to, it's like me and you are on a team. I'm going to choose you first for dodgeball because we're best friends or something. You know what I mean? It's like we're already made an agreement. I want Ian on my team because I know I like him. He's a good guy. And I don't want to have him last, or I don't want the other team to get him first. That's what Google and YouTube are like. So whenever you type in something to Google, they're immediately going to show you anything that they're paid partnerships for. Now, the Australian government has banned Google for that reason because they put a claim out there saying that you should have to pay a certain amount of money to the other companies and put their results at the top first. You can't just dominate the whole thing because then it eliminates them from making revenue money. And so now a hashtag is trending right now called delete Facebook. And the reason why people are starting to look at their Facebook and delete that is because of the fact is now Mark Zuckerberg has put out a statement against the Australian government not agreeing to what they're asking of them to a lot of the money like I'm going to make sure I can read this article correctly. I don't want to pull out my phone in the middle of a thing, but it's kind of important because I want to make sure I get all the facts of this right because you don't just want to say stuff, you know what I mean? Um give me some filler. Keep
I'm rubbing off on you. I like that. No, I've got it pulled up as well, and I'm seeing this. So there's a lady I follow on Twitter, and she had that up this morning, and I didn't have a chance to really kind of dig into what she was talking about or look, at the entirety of her thread, but it definitely looks like there's some folks that are it appears to be located in just Australia, and there is we got 19,000 some odd tweets about it right now.
Yeah, well, Facebook and Google have been locked in a battle with media companies and the Australian government after the latter drafted a bill that would require the two tech giants to negotiate with news publication companies and pay them for using their content. In August, Facebook made it clear that it would block users and media outlets in Australia from sharing news links on its platform, including Instagram, if the bill were to pass. The row only progressed from here on. Through Google, who had threatened to block Australia from using its search engine, signed a deal with News Corp and will now be paying Rupert Murdoch's company for its news content in Australia, UK, and US. Facebook did not budge. Instead, the social networking platform pushed the block button on Australian users and news organizations. This was enough to start a riot on Twitter with thousands of people supporting the complete boycott of Facebook. Remember to hashtag delete Facebook like you should have done years ago when your information was leaked. Because I mean, I think everybody kind of realized that, like, yeah, they're selling off your information or whatever it is, and people are still okay with that. They're like, you know what, it's not that big of a deal. It's funny because all the tweets you see of people yelling at other people on the aspect of like, Facebook's the only way I keep in touch with my family still. It's like there's other forms of communication to do so, but I get it because that's how I know birthdays are coming up and stuff like that. And it's helpful for that tool. But see, people are so open and personal on social media like that, and then their information is getting sold somewhere, which is they're okay with. But the issue is now all these governments are starting to notice that percentages of money, like when you do an advertisement on Facebook, I've done advertisements on Facebook for my podcast. 53% of that money goes to Google. 20 something percent of that goes to Mark Zuckerberg. And then the leftover goes to whatever other companies they want to split it with, or whatever ones that help get that product out there, the people that help, advertise, whatever. That's the issue, is that there's a lot of other companies that aren't getting the majority of the percentage. It's just going to a main corporation, which is making like monopolies and all these other types of stuff that we're supposed to be avoiding. I mean, is it finally time? Is it all my ramblings of a madman, my I am legend theory, all these things that have come true? Is it now coming time to social media is now becoming this corrupted demon that we've all seen? Or, I mean, we've all kind of known it, but are you going to delete your Facebook? Are you going to, I mean, I think a big point of that is too, maybe not delete it, but don't be so personalized to it. A lot of people talk to it like it's their diary, and they don't understand when you do that information. I mean, we're all technically still going to be technological slaves on the aspect of we have cell phones. And no matter if we're on it or not, if I'm just talking to you right now, I'm going to get a bunch of fucking things advertisement wise on the internet, such as like you said delete Facebook. Well, we made a banner out of it. It's like, oh, I might as well put it in my house. Like it's it's this concept of like we're waking up to the idea that there's a lot of stuff that should be controlled by an overall community aspect of things. And we're not really paying attention to the idea for so long that these are privately owned companies that don't fall under certain measures of regulation, such as they can choose what goes up and what goes down. They can choose who they can block and who they can do this. And I had been talking to someone before about it doesn't mean that they can't say those things. It does restrict the flow, I would say. So if I say, or if Alex Jones, he's banned off of Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, basically every major platform to get your information out there, where he has to go on a Joe Rogan podcast just to be able to reach people. People that don't watch Joe Rogan don't really know who Alex Jones is. You know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
you've banned him from all these other avenues of getting his information out there or getting his voice out there. And that should be managed. That needs to be looked at as no company should be able to, even if it's privately owned. You're so big now. Maybe back in the day, like 10, 15 years ago, for sure. Yeah, because YouTube wasn't even huge. It was we watched fucking cat videos on there. But now it's become a platform for people to
I
receive
still do.
information. Well, I mean, but
Yeah.
it's
I
now
no, I got you. I got you.
okay, it's now a platform to receive information, and that's the issue now, is now that it's basically becoming into news. And it's the same issue I have with Fox News or whatever you want to say. Whenever they get sued, you know how they get out of that lawsuit?
Really good lawyers.
Yeah, but you know what they clarify their system as? Entertainment.
Yeah.
They go, we're not news, we're entertainment. So, but everybody knows you as a news source. Everybody knows you as the way to get our information and everything. No, no, but we're
It's
entertainment.
in the name. Yeah, it's in the name. And I would say I agree with their statement that most of the news and most of the news stories and most news networks at this point are more entertainment than news. We don't go there to get facts because very few news sources are publishing facts, they're publishing opinions. And when we have opinions instead of facts, it's a talk show instead of a news report. Uh, so I would say legally, probably they are more of an entertainment station than a news station anyway. So I can see how they get away with it and how their lawyers are able to spin it because all they've got to do is play the opinion card.
But what pushed us to get our minds construed to the idea that these are factual sites to go get our information of? And that's because they are top results. And that is all from paid partnerships on the idea of whenever you search something to find out information. Most people type into Google, they ask a question. They're not asking, they're not stating a fact into Google. They're asking a question like, when was this or when was it? How many miles are in a whatever from this country to this country? It's like people are typing things in trying to find information. And when paid partnerships are giving their information with the people that they're in business with, they're going to be the top results. So then you look at that as like, well, that's a respected news source. Like so many people, how many people listen to The Guardian still? When that's been proven as a terrible site to get information from, where Obama said something that was in The Guardian, and then he had to retract it about the wage gap, or whatever. And I'm not even going to jive down the wage gap role. I'm going to talk about the idea that for so long, we have not been noticing all of these things, and it has completely ruined us. Like if I spent 30 years of your life, I told you from when you were a baby all the way to you were 30 years old, that water is made of mostly nitrogen. And you're like, what? That's a very scientific example. Let me pick a fucking better one. Coke is the only soft drink in America. You're going to be like, oh my God, Coke's the only soft drink in America. And then I just keep you in a hole and you just sit there and think Coke's the only soft drink. And then you come out to the world and you find out, no, there's root beer, there's Pepsi, there's Mountain Dew, there's all these other types of companies out there that are doing the same soft drink, just in a different flavor. And you're like, oh, what do you, but everything I know is Coke. You're going to have that initial instinct of like, oh my God, like it's all still Coke. It's all still, every time you go to a restaurant, I'll take a Coke. It's like, we only have Pepsi products. There's other products. It's like, you have that ingrained in your head now. We have been ingrained for so long that all these top results that we get are the best avenues of information. And now it's starting to be looked at like, oh, a lot of these companies are in pockets with each other and a lot of them aren't really right. And that the fact that you would hear a Fox News place or something like that, and it's starting to be looked at as like, oh, that's Fox News-ish. That's Fox News-ish. They're going as an entertainment website. They're not really information anymore. So now we're kind of backtracking all this built up pathways in our mind of what is true, what is correct information, what is fact. We've gotten fact misconstrued with just entertainment now. It's crazy to see how it's all coming out now. Like people are starting to realize like, oh shit, like what? What do you mean? You're telling me this article on why fruit can kill you is bad? Like it's just I thought this was new science. It's like, no, it's a top result because whatever company is at that top result, that's getting paid with Google. That's getting paid with all these search engines that we have. And that's why I think all these, whatever you want to say, isolated lone survivor style search engines like DuckDuckGo, that'll give you more than just what the top result is. They'll give you a bunch of them that aren't paid partnerships. I think that's important to have. And I think that's the importance of like, I don't think anybody thought the internet was going to be this big. I don't think anybody thought that we were going to go this way with it and it was going to become this so much thing where now there's like a Illuminati in the internet, like of just multiple companies sitting at a table, Google, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, everybody's sitting there. Mark Zuckerberg's wearing a fucking robe and shit. Like it's crazy right now, dude. I know I'm going off on a rant, but holy crap.
Do you need to take a break? Do you have water or something? I mean, you just
No, but
are
like
you good?
talk for 5 minutes or something so I can fill up this episode.
So right on. No, you said so many things that I agree with, and I think are probably there's truth to it. But again, we this is a tough one because I feel as though the responsibility on independent study and research is on us. One thing that the internet has done to us is make us inherently lazy, and so when we can't type in a little phrase or a catchphrase or a word and get those results right away, we just kind of give up. We don't do our homework. We don't go into into depth things. We don't look at peer reviewed stuff, and I think that's important. That's super important because a newscaster who's got a degree in broadcast journalism, right, isn't a fucking scientist. They're not a fucking, you know what I mean? They're not a doctor. They're not these other professions that take, almost decades to, and I can't even use the word perfect, but to educate themselves to a point to where they can speak professionally and be considered a subject matter expert. So what you've got is some dude with a liberal arts degree telling you scientific facts and whatnot. But what are they doing? Don't listen to that fucking guy. Go peer review this shit. Go find it. Now, what we need to do is we need to make that stuff more accessible. We need to make science journals, history journals, those kinds of things more readily available, so we can sit down and we can see what this scientist makes this claim. And I would love to do this with some of the stuff that comes out of Dr. Fauci. Right? I think he's a great epidemiologist. I think he's been a little bit influenced with some political stuff just due to the nature of his job. Uh, Peer review of some of his work. What are his peers saying? What are the other? Because I mean, he's a great epidemiologist, I'm sure. Is he the best one? I don't know. Probably not. What are the other ones saying? And I'm just using him as an example. This could go again, political professionals or whatever, not politicians, because the truth is hard to get from them. But,
Wait. You're
political
telling me
analysis.
politicians aren't the truth beings that we all know them to be?
This is a dangerous road, man. I'm not sure I'm ready to go down this one yet. This morning, I need
I'm
more
already in the
coffee. But
conspiracy route. I'm already
yeah,
like
I
just
know,
even
I know you. Yeah,
finding out
but
Google's bending you over and hitting you with all these different types of results than the ones you actually want. It's like trying to like, shoo.
let's use Google for a second. So again, and this just goes back to our laziness. We Google something and the page pulls up. Right?
Okay.
Now, it says right at the top, you know, 20 of 8,572 results. What results do we look at? Do we look at results 21 through 8,000? No. No, we just go to that first page. We find something that kind of sits where what we're looking for, and then we click it. The results are there. Now, some of the results, we talk about censorship, and I don't know if I want to use that word because I don't know if it is censorship truly by definition, but it's definitely altering of what's available.
Use the term
We look at
gatekeeping because that is the legit definition of what they're doing by they're not if you use like being canceled, if you use like cancel culture, if you use whatever that type of word, it means that you couldn't be able to find it. They just make it very, very hard to find it. So that would be an abject or objective of gatekeeping. You're making it so even though that result's still up there, you make it the last fucking page where you have to spend hours and hours trying to get there to find it.
and all that goes down to org culture, right? Organizational culture. So these organizations have a culture. What is their culture? What is their values and basis moral system, right? Where does it lean? And if it leans to this side, of course, naturally, their org culture is going to push those things. Where they mess up and where their credibility comes into question. And I think this is kind of where we're seeing some stuff going on right now. I think of Parlor is probably the biggest one to put out there right now. But when other organizations don't match their culture, instead of still keeping them on there as a balance to let people decide, to see both sides of whatever issue it is they're looking at, they, you know what I mean? They either shut it off, they shut it down, or they put it, out of that 8,000 results, it's result 7,999 because they know we're not going to go that far through the search results. So there is the gatekeeping term is probably good, but again, and that kind of to me personally, I have to say personally, it lends to their bias. It shows a bias, right? If you're only going to give me, and I think that was part of my issue with Twitter. I acknowledge that it is a private company. There are terms of use that you have to agree to use the platform. And if you violate the terms of use, then you need to go. Now, how they decide to enforce those terms of use needs to be consistent. And I think it's not. I think they have a leaning towards a certain view and a certain thought pattern to where people, if I were to say certain words and you were to say certain words, I'm going to get shut off permanently or for a while, and you're going to be okay. Right? We said the same words, but how those words were directed, in which manner they were directed, in accordance with how that company is leaning with their org culture, makes a difference. And that's what sucks. And people use that, the Twitter's a private company, and they're talking about, the Trump, but I'm going to say even more so than just Trump, but some of the harder right leaning conservatives have been shut off of that platform. Do I think it's the right thing? Do I think they violated? I don't know. I think if you went through everybody's account, you could find something that somewhere somebody violated something. And the private company thing, like they're a private company. They're a private company. I'm hearing that a lot. That argument fits a narrative that people want to adopt and say it's okay. But let's think back a few years, and let's think about another private company that was in Colorado that made wedding cakes. So
Yeah, but
was it okay for no, let me finish this thought. Right. So if we're going to go with it's a private company, they can do what they want. Why does that rule apply to Twitter, but it doesn't apply to the private business over here in Colorado? Right. And I'm not saying that owner, I don't know the owner personally. I don't know. I know what I've read through the news stuff and about the accounts of that incident. That guy may have been an asshole and an intolerant piece of shit. But he's a private business owner, and should he have been forced by the government to make a cake for something that he disagreed with morally, ethically, whatever the case might be? I don't care.
Well, you know what the main question of that exact cake scenario was why the fuck didn't just go to another place that made cakes in the area? There were plenty of other businesses to go to, but you know why they went there was because they
Because they
knew
were
that.
told no.
Yeah, no, because they knew that person was going to have that reaction. It was a clickbait article. The whole point was they were trying to get attention. They were trying to get into the news. They were trying to get that established as this person won't do this. They searched for that guy and they kept badgering him about that. It's been called out as it was all just an idea to get this right and spark a rise out of people to get that, because they knew that he was going to keep saying no. He was going to keep saying no's, and they shut down his business because of it. It was the aspect of they went and they found, it's like if you found, I don't know, a certain avenue or a certain group of a cult or something of people that only accepted female people into their group, then you're gonna try and you're gonna be like, well, I should be able to go in here. Well, I should be able to go in here. You're know that you're not going to be allowed to based on you're a guy and that's a girl. But
what if I identify as a girl?
And that's the world we're in today. That's the fucking world we're in.
Slippery slope, right? Slippery fucking slope, man.
This is what's crazy to me though, because this is very important. I talk to a lot of people with PhDs and academic. I talk to people from all over. Their PhDs go into defense. They have to defend their PhD on not based on what science is, but now based on what the culture is now. You can't say that because that's hateful. You can't say that. You can't make that study because it's hateful. My best thing is when it came to a guy that made a study, when he published it, it was a joking study. It was a joke to where it was supposed to understand. Here's the kind of the moral of it was a woman would sit in a dog park for a full year, but she would spend 8 hours a day in this dog park, like calculated up the hours and everything like that. And she would watch dogs all day for 8 hours. And the study was to show that 56% of dogs were gay because she saw more male dogs humping male dogs than male dogs humping female dogs. So naturally, dogs are gay. That was the study. And it was the numbers, the statistics, the percentages, everything was all ridiculously made up. And it was to point out that they're not even reading the studies anymore. They're just passing it because they're afraid that it would be cancel culture, it would be hate speech, it would be all these types of things if you didn't let that pass and you actually read it. As soon as they saw the gender thing, they go, yep, it's a good study, passed it. The guy's like, really? You're going to pass that study? And they're like, yeah, we're going to. It's a good study. I'm glad you do. Thank you for your research. And he goes, I made up half of that shit. Like if you read that, the number of hours, that means a woman would have spent 8-9 hours in a park a day. for a whole year watching male dogs and female dogs, you're not even taking into a correlation. If it's raining, who's going to take their dog park or dog to a dog park when it's raining out? You're not adding all these other variables that are in there. You're just looking at the basis of there's these certain keywords, and because of those, we have to pass it. Now, here's the issue. Just like with social media, it's creating schizophrenia, but it's people always yell at me, "Oh, Robbie, pick a fucking side, man. You're always in the middle of the road. You never choose one way, you never choose the other." Because we don't know what's right. We don't know. We have no fucking clue. Everyone thinks they have an idea of what it is. And now that idea and scientific fact, whatever you want to say, or what we can call like law or science, is now even getting worse because now you can't say certain things. Now you can't do certain things because it might offend, it might this. And in some cases, that's important that you have those regulations. But when it comes to PETA, Jesus, man. Banning animal slurs. You know this gets me. Like it just I look at it like what are we doing in life? What do we have? I can't believe I'm getting upset,
Let me
man.
okay, take a deep breath. Let me walk down this road with you for just a little bit. All right.
Hold my hand
So
and tell me
yeah,
it's going to be
let's
okay.
it's gonna be okay because
Godfather scenario me. Put me out to
yeah.
the river to look at the nice, beautiful river out there and then shoot me in the back of the head because, oh my God, the information, the battle for it. Aren't we
Yeah.
supposed to be, as the human race, striving for an era of success, striving to better and bigger places, right? Like Mars, like all these things. But all we do is shoot each other in the foot. We're not, we're literally building up a block and then taking two off, putting down a block, taking two off. We're not even moving forward at all besides our scientific invention. And even then, you can't touch anything that is biological about a person. You can't touch anything that's chemical, anything, even when it comes to depression. You can make up a study saying, like, there's a correlation between depression based on this. That means naturally dogs are more depressed than people are. It's like,
Well, so let's go back to that dog study thing, right? And this is where there's a lot of impetus that we need to take and put on ourselves. We need to do this. So, get the study and read the study, right? And then you should be able to, as any reasonable human being, look for certain things. How did the person identify what was a male dog and what was a female dog? Most dogs right now are neutered.
she had
So,
to check by
right?
sticking her fucking
So,
hand under there.
well, exactly. So what basis were they using to identify what's a male dog and what's a female dog if the dogs were neutered? And if there's no, if that aspect isn't addressed, instantly the study is void because that person who's observing doesn't know whether or not it's, and then look at the people who approved it. Right. So if there were major gaps in questions that me as knucklehead drag or knuckle dragger Ian, right, can identify with just some common sense stuff, right? And then how are they also have to answer the question, right? Sexuality in dogs, right? And you have to go back and you have to do another animal study about the act of humping, right? So you see humping happening all over, right? It's not sex, right? Dogs don't think about sex, they think about reproduction and dominance. It's two things. Are those two categories addressed? They're not. Humping is used as a form of dominance, and it's also used to reproduce. So if you can't identify whether it's a male or female dog, you have no idea who's humping who, right? And then you don't know the pack mentality of that individual animal, nor what it's trying to do. And you're putting that human spin of sexuality into an animal. And do you know for a fact, and can you quantifiably prove that that dog looks at sex as pleasure? The only animals that we know look I think it's dolphins and oh shit, I'm gonna get fucking blown up for this. I think it's chimpanzees. Dolphins and chimpanzees are the only two other animals on the planet. Animals, right, that have sex for other means than reproduction. So, unless you're doing some breakthrough study on why dogs have sex, right, and if dogs are having sex or are they reproducing, there's a difference. There's a difference. So instantly, but that impetus is on us. That falls on us as the individual. So then we look at the source who approved it and published the study as being quantifiable. Then that source becomes a source that we no longer go to for reliable information. We shut that source off. And again, this goes back to that whole peer-to-peer thing because anybody in the scientific community, any sort of veterinarian or veterinarian, that's a terrible thing. Any sort of biologist, there we go, big words. Any sort of biologist is going to look at that and go, hold on, right? You're looking at the time thing. So the amount of time that a human spent with some of these studies, humans do actually go and watch fucking fish swim for 9 hours a day and gather information. That happens. So that would be a more believable thing. A lady spending 8 hours in a dog park every single day for a year, uh, it would make her weird, very weird. And I would call the cops because there's this weird chick just sitting there watching dogs and writing notes. That would make me, bring in the cops, ask her what she's doing. When she identifies that she's doing a study, cool, I'm going to leave her alone. But that would be more believable to me than looking at some of the analytical stuff. And we don't care. Again, we're the Google nation, right? So we're gonna believe that study, and because that fits a narrative, that you can see. Again, going back to the org culture thing, you can see whatever. Uh, I don't even know, whatever place published that study as being legitimate and accepted it and put it out there for the world to say this is good, right? They're garbage. We need to put them away. And we need to, I'm not saying we go out and attack them. Nope. We just don't listen to whatever they put out and we move on. And then when somebody brings up this study, somebody starts talking about gender and says, "Oh, I read this great study about how dogs da 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 da." You are now armed because you've read the study, you've done the analysis, you've read the peer reviews, and you can say, "Actually, how did she identify?" Actually, and then not to completely destroy their argument. You're not looking to win. And that's another thing we have to stop doing.
You
Not
also
every
have to be
conversation we have is winning, right? Winning and losing a conversation. That's not it, right? We need to go in and say, okay, I can understand kind of how you got there, but here's what I observed when I read that study. She didn't identify how she identified the dogs being male or female in a neutered dog society culture, right? She didn't identify the reproductive habits of dogs compared to other animals in nature. She didn't do these things. So how did you answer those questions? And then you ask them, and then how did you get past those roadblocks in this study? And find out what they say. And if they've got nothing, if they can't come back at you, then dude, they're just followers. They're sheep. And not to judge them or put them in a bad person category. You just put that in for me personally. Okay, so this is a person I can be friends with, but I'm not going to have these types of conversations with. We're just not going to talk about that stuff. There are 20 million other topics to talk about. Topic number 4 is just going to be one we put up on the shelf that
I
we don't
get
talk about.
I get
Kind of like
your
you and me with fucking zombies and immunizations.
yeah. Well, mine's
So yeah,
more of
yeah, we
like
put
just
that one up on the shelf, but we
I
don't we
like
don't touch that anymore. We
I
don't
like
talk
to
about that anymore.
joke
It just
about
it's
it.
just
You know
it's
I'm
up there.
true.
Yeah, I know
You
you
know
do.
it's
You
true.
piss
Come
me
on.
off, you shithead.
Look, now listen. Now, even when it comes to this, is why I say like I'm in the middle of the road, and people are like, "Well, pick a side." Well, the issue is you can't really pick a side because even with case studies, as much as you want to find a case study and say, "Look at this," there's about 265 different occurrences of this happening, and there was only 4 that it didn't happen in this scenario. So the evidence is clear that it's going to be fact based on the 265 that did pass and the 4 that didn't. Okay, there's more overwhelming passing of it rather than it failing. Same thing with plant perception. Okay, plant perception, there was I think 362 cases or something like that total, and it was like there were I think 5 or 10 more cases of it not happening than it did happen. So that means plant perception isn't a thing. We might pick that up at a later date, but that's usually how case studies work. They go off percentages of what's right and what's wrong. Same thing with the vegan and meat study. And this is when I came to this conclusion. It's all about the fucking words that you say. And this is like that with anything when it comes to our court systems, when it comes to debates, when it comes to anything like that. Just so I can make this 100% clear, I understand everybody else's perspective. And sometimes I get enlightened with another one, but I always have in the back of my head, like, oh, well, there are certain things when it comes to regulations and companies and Google and all this stuff. I get the other perspective side of that. But this is also, there's a giant issue going on with the idea of how when you read something, it's all about how it's also said. And that got pointed out to me in that Joe Rogan podcast that was like 3 hours long about vegan and meat. I'll send it to you. But I'm not a vegan at all. I eat plants a lot, but I like meat too. I like fish. I'm a fish guy. Eggs and all that too are my jam. Um, but when I was watching the study, it said 75% of people experienced no causation or no whatever from eating meat. The cancer wasn't linked to meat. Then it was like 15% experienced something of it causing cancer from meat. There was a link there. 15% says that meat does cause cancer. 75% were unaffected. And then there was whatever percentage left of, add those up for me. You're good at math, right? Yeah.
No,
Fif-
I'm terrible at math. Oh,
15 plus 75 is
90.
90. And then so okay, so then 10% of people said that there wasn't a link. There wasn't a link. Okay. But the dude, how he wrote this study, he was like, see, there's, and the whole time I'm sitting there like, yeah, there's no link. There's obviously no link. But the way he added up the words, he went the 10% and the 75%. So he says in the study that based on this analysis or this research, peer reviewed, always tossing the word peer reviewed makes it sound a lot better. He said based on this peer reviewed study that 85% of people did not or weren't affected by meat. So that means meat isn't linked to cancer. And I'm looking at that like, yeah, it makes sense. 85%, right? They're adding the two. You can't do that. If you're doing a case study based on, let's say, 15% of vegetables or whatever, or 15% of people experienced getting cancer from meat cells or whatever the hell you want to say, you would say 15%. You wouldn't add the 75 to it because then you could say 15. No, you would say 90% of people either experienced or didn't or weren't affected by this. You're adding those two together, which makes your argument a lot stronger to make it look like, oh, now you're one-sided, that now that meat does cause cancer. It's all about the way you say the terms, such as if I did a study saying, um, if Ian grew his beard out, if Ian grew out his facial hair, what are the percentages of him getting laid from his wife based on his beard growth? So let's say
They
65.
go up.
Okay,
Quantifiably, I can say they go up.
perfect. Thank you. So now
Period.
we're noticing that there's a 45% chance that Ian is going to get laid from having more facial hair. There's about
We
five.
need to bring the numbers down. I've been married for 23 years. It's more like 17%. All right,
Oh,
let's
well,
keep it real.
give me an even number so I can do the math easier. Let's say 20% of your chances go up if you grow out your facial hair. Then there's about a 50% chance it's going to be based on the day, like if they're feeling it or not, the time, the hour. So we'll do that for like location basis. And then we'll say, let's say 30% of a chance that you're actually decreasing in the amount of sex you're going to get because you have facial hair. So now the study that we're going to fight here is if Ian grows out his facial hair, will he get laid more? So we take that 20% and we take that whatever 50% and we add those two together and we say, well, there's a 70% chance that Ian will get laid or it won't be affecting his game at all. You say it like that, people go, well, 70%, like, damn, they just look at the number. They don't look at how that's being said. So analyze what's being said in any of these case studies, in any of these percentages, anything like that. But a lot of people don't want to do that work. A lot of people don't want to find out that information. But you can't say, if anything, you could turn that case study around and say that there's 30% chance, or you add it to the 50, there's an 80% chance that Ian's not going to get laid because he has facial hair, because there's a 30% chance that it's going to decrease and there's a 50% chance it's unaffected. You can add those two together, but you can't add the positive and you can't add the normal one. It gets really fucking sketchy and really crazy where you're like Charlie from Always Sunny in Philadelphia with all the pins on the fucking wall pointing toward, like, you see this? I discovered it. It's because you start pointing out flaws, and it's all about how, when you're reading these studies, how are the words conveyed? How are they being displayed? You have to look what that person's bias is, because there's always a bias. Even when it comes to a study, it's hard to find someone that's impartial, whether or not, especially with something that's a hot topic as meat and vegetables, anything of that, anything diet trends, anything of what's morally right and what's morally wrong. You have to add in all these factors, like you were saying. Nobody accounted for the dog park raid. Nobody accounted for the ones that were neutered, the dogs that were neutered. These are all variables that don't even get brought into question when it comes into a study, when it's something that could cost someone their job, such as talking about race, talking about gender, talking about all these things, which makes it hard to have scientific facts. And when you can't have scientific facts, we're never progressing, we're only degressing. In the way that our society is becoming more woke, or becoming more comfortable with the ideas of what's going on around us, such as finally we're understanding that people are fucking people and not treating them like dog shit, that's amazing. But it's also becoming a conflict when it comes to somebody making a study based on, like, well, We're going to look up at the stars and see that, oh, well, actually, we got a lot of these planets wrong. There's actually extra planets in our solar system that we used to think are stars. You can't say that. That offends me. Why does that offend you? Because I study astrological signs and I identify as a Taurus. It's like, hang on a second. We're talking about science, not a bunch of people that took peyote and drugs and looked up at the sky and saw a fucking fish coming out of a vase. You know, it
But
boils down to a deep
that's
level.
on you're right, but a lot of that is on you. So, do you give that person who did a bunch of peyote and is talking about star signs uh 30 seconds of your headspace and timing, or do you give them an hour?
I see your
And that,
perspective on that,
and
but the issue is
so
if you live by that guideline, you're cutting off a large percent of population and you're cutting off a large percentage of your own growth. The idea is
mm,
not to turn that into a debate. The idea is not to take it how we
right.
want to take it and say you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. The
And
idea
I'm
is to
not
hear
saying that
no, no,
to
no.
come at them and say that they're wrong.
But
This
but
person, I'm going to have that conversation, but their point, if it's abstract and mushy, I'm gonna use the term mushy, right? It doesn't have rigid walls and a structure. Um, I'm gonna enjoy that conversation. I'm gonna use that conversation to see that the inside of that person, the topic of the conversation. Fuck the topic. They already are have
I,
identified
I,
themselves as being mushy.
I
But after that topic is over, I'm out. You know what I mean? Like as far as that specific, astrological sign, for example,
okay.
right?
I,
I'm
I
not
I
gonna I'm
I
not gonna
agree
think
with
about
you.
that anymore. It's not gonna give me any no more time on that thing.
I agree with you, but the idea is the way that you just said that, even saying like, why would you give person any more of your time? People are going to hear that and do what I just did and thought you meant that means you're going to cut them off and say they're wrong and walk away, which inherently
No.
disables your growth. So I'm glad you explained that a little bit to help me understand a little bit more. But it's the idea that when you say or you don't want to talk to someone based on their views, based on if they're a political party leaning, based on whatever they believe in or whatever they don't believe in, it's not saying you have to agree with them. It's not saying you're supposed to tell them they're wrong either. It's an idea of you're supposed to listen and hear another person's perspective and how they came to this thing. And you're supposed to talk. You're supposed to have that conversation, which is supposed to be key because it helps bring enlightenment to both of your own lives. Whether you're looking at this person like, yeah, I see your perspective of how you would see that. Like, if I would have said, Googled flat Earth, and I would have got a billion results of flat Earth, and I would have never known if the Earth was round, then I would be so much convinced that the Earth was flat. And then when someone tried to tell me it was round, I wouldn't believe them because everything I have seen has been about flat Earth. You know, that's why when I talk to those people that believe in the flat Earth and believe in all these things, I don't say it's bullshit to their face. In my mind, I'm going, that's kind of nuts. But at the same aspect, I'm hearing them out and I'm seeing, I'm like, oh yeah, I see why you would see that now. It's an idea. Like some dude told me birds weren't real. He said birds were just a part of the simulation. And I'm like, okay, what's your processing here? Are you basing it off of like folklore? Because anytime you look in folklore, and that's just from studying folk, like just old style traditions and warnings and omens, you start to realize that birds are a signing of warning of something that's bad's about to happen, like an apocalypse or some type of drought or starvation, or, crops are going to die. Birds are always a sign of that. So it makes sense that they will be part of a simulation in that dude's perspective of things. But what do we base this off of? What's science and what's fact? Here's the part where you have to try and figure out that science and fact thing line gets drawn very, very sketchily, just like your trust in Fauci gets drawn sketchily. He told you don't buy the N95 mask because he was trying to protect the healthcare workers. Well, he didn't initially come out and say that. He lied to everybody, and then it ends up coming out as that. It's the same thing with science. We think something at this time, and 10 years from now, it's going to be exposed as being false. Maybe. We don't know, but we're trying our best to find a grasp or look for a fucking life vest or something in our immediate vicinity because we're drowning. As the people, the human race. This is why it was so big on the alien thing, was because I just watched Mars Attacks too, which is fucking a great movie, dude. Let me tell you something. That's exactly how it would be if they came down here. They're not. If aliens, there's two objective ideas of what it is. One, They're watching us and they're trying their best to make sure we're not destroying this planet that we're on. And we're doing a very crappy job at trying to preserve it, to be honest with you. But they're looking at it like, if this planet goes into a critical state, we got to do something. Maybe just show we're alive somewhere so they stop polluting so much and maybe focus on us or something. Or they're going to come down here and they're going to annihilate us because the idea that they've watched us for so long, hoping that we would change. And out of the thousands of years, all we're doing is getting worse. We're just evolving into a new form of fighting. We're doing the same shit we did 6,000 years ago, 8,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago. We're doing the same exact thing now. We're just picking each other apart and we're using different tools to do so. Our tools evolved. We turned into using our phones instead of using a spear or a rock and you bash somebody's head in. Now you just bash them over the head with tweets. I mean, oh my God, the amount of like outrage somebody can get where they just sit there and paragraph after paragraph after paragraph after paragraph just because they disagree with something somebody said. It's like, are you? Oh, I just it's why I'm so happy there's delete Facebook right now. I have never been more overjoyed. I want to go out into the streets and just start singing and dancing in the rain like a Austin Powers movie or something.
But the delete Facebook, right? The movement behind it, you've had the power to do that all along.
I've done it,
You
but
know,
now the world is waking up to it, is what I'm saying. I'm not happy like, now that it's trending, I can actually do it. I'm not saying that. I'm
yeah.
saying now the world is seeing the corruption and how evil it is. We all knew it was evil, but now everyone's starting to be awoke to it a little bit.
Are we though? And this is where like I need I'm gonna sit back on this one and watch a little bit more because I don't know if that's the case, right? Because this is a trend, as you stated, and when it comes down to actually hitting the delete button, are you going to hit that delete button?
No, I
You know,
believe
and I,
most people are going to just not use it for a while and they're going to come back to it after it stops trending.
and you see these freaking these virtue signaling events that people do all the time on social media. I'm leaving this platform because blah, whatever's, insert reason, whatever. And I'm out. I'm taking a break. I'm done with this. I'm gone. And then what happens? And 2 days later, they're right back on their bullshit again and not the same fucking platform. And then
I
you come
just
out and you're like, hey, why are
I
you taking I thought you were taking a break, man. And then
I
they're like, then they get all defensive about it. Well, it's like, okay, so either have the scruples to fucking walk away or don't say that you're going to walk away and then don't walk away. You know what I mean? Like, like
I
that's
hold on. I have a good example. I just had a guest that I recorded with, and it hasn't been released yet while we're recording this. And he put on Twitter, I saw it was like, I'm giving up Twitter for Lent. And I'm like, hold on a second, player. I need to get my information from you for the episode. So he's like, give me your email. And he's like, oh, he's still using email, but he's just not using his Twitter, the main source I communicate with him on. So it's like you start to see that like there is a good part about stepping back. And I think it's because you get so ingrained into it being a part of your life every single day that you start pushing that goalpost, much like these community guidelines are. Eventually they'll push the goalpost. You can't say this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. Same thing when you're on Facebook 24/7. When you're constantly posting status updates or something like that, then eventually you become so open to it where you're posting very, very private information you might not want out there. It's kind of like don't drunk text. It's like drunk texting. You're just becoming so infatuated with the love of social media, you start putting up all these personal things on there. And then when you take a step back for like maybe like a couple days or even a week, you go back to it like, why the fuck was I so ingrained to this thing? Like I really cared about what a like or something that somebody tossed me was. You know what I mean? Like it's inhibiting your own growth. And I mean, it's right now. This is what the issue is that the world right now is at conflicts with each other, and we're starting to notice that we're being a lot more tense than we have been for a very long time. And I think that's an objective idea of everything that we do see on social media. And I think you could do it in the right way. You can 100% make your social media the most positive thing in the freaking world, but it doesn't last forever. Eventually, somebody's going to have that bad day. You know, like we talk about
well, right.
depression,
But
there's the
then
good days and bad days.
that walks into the whole you're being fake. If the only thing you put on social media is
Who's
your
fucking
happiness,
real on social media? A lot more people are fake than
you're
they are real.
you're absolutely right. And the presence on social media, and that's the problem. I think one of the additional, into the list of things you can add this to your growing list of issues with social media is the fact that people believe they read the tweets, they read the status updates, and then they think that they know that person. And that person, the facade or the personality that they're presenting to the world via social media, quite often, I don't know if I would say in most cases, but I would say in a good number of cases, the persona that is projected on social media is not who that person is, because they're afraid of getting their actual feelings don't get put out there. They're worried about employment, because employers are now scouring social media of their employees to make sure that their employees are in line with the company's freaking org culture, and doing all these other things. So now, one of the pitfalls is we see this thing and we think that that's real. We think that is that person. In reality, it's not that person. You know what I mean? My the Y Whiskey Twitter handle, right? Um, I don't put my personal shit on there. I promote, I talk to people, I share stuff, historical stuff, my how I break down an event or something, that I'll put that on there. But you're not getting Ian, you're getting the host of Why Whiskey, and um, sit down at a table with me, and the conversation is going to be very, very different, because I'm one of the clear cut examples of I am regulated. There's a written regulation that states what I can and cannot talk about, and certain actions I'm allowed to take and not take because of my employment. So therefore, in public on social media, and where that's my wife and I share a Facebook account. I'm not on it very often, maybe once a week or so, but my wife, and we actually had to have a conversation about this. Um, my wife is a little bit more conservative in her beliefs than I am. And she started sharing some stuff, and I was like, hey, this is kind of walking that line. And because we share the account, they're not going to differentiate between you and me, even though you'll come out and say, hey, I posted that was me. They're going to be like, bleh, he's presenting on this as himself as well. So therefore, so we actually had to have that conversation about that, and share that information, or have that, sit down and say, okay, we gotta kind of calm down on this side of the house. But anyway, but that's that. And we see these things and we think that this is who this person is in real life, and it's just not the case. That's not who they are. And shame on us for falling into that pitfall. Shame on us for believing the persona that we see on a screen, whether it's our computer or in our phones, is the actual person, and that they're sharing the real life stuff. Those real life conversations, they don't happen on social media. They happen, you and I, they happen over the phone. The real life Ian and Robbie, or Rob with two B's, conversation happen when we're talking over the phone. I am a drunk dialer, man. I am a drunk dialer. I
I
do
love
that.
you to
I love
death, but the biggest thing going through my head right now is why the fuck are you sharing a social media account on the aspect of it's free? Like it doesn't cost to make your own. I get it if you're like, oh, we can show our family photos or whatever. Yeah, have a group account, but it's not like you're paying a subscription or something. It's like, to me, in my mind, that's like sharing soup. Like you're both eating the same bowl of soup at a
yeah.
restaurant. Like people are like, what the fuck? Pour it in two
We share
different
French fries.
bowls like a normal person, and you can split the soup that way. You don't have to eat out of the same
Dude,
bowl, you lady and
yeah,
tramp.
hold up. I got 5 kids. Economically, I'm gonna share a bowl of soup because it's cheaper.
Then
So
put it in two different bowls. Don't put it in just one giant bowl of porridge and sitting there, both of you spoon and be like, is that a romantic date to you? No, you pour it like when you have a glass of wine, or if you have a thing of wine, you pour it into two different glasses. If you're sharing it with someone, you both just don't drink from the same fucking bottle unless you don't have any glasses. Doesn't make
it's
any
like you don't
sense.
even know it. Of course, we drink from the same
That's
bottle.
too,
We don't want
that's,
to. We don't want to get the glasses dirty. Come on, man. They're so pretty when they sit up on their shelf, nice and clean. Come on, man. We're not gonna, yeah, dude. What the
Do you
fuck?
share your
No,
whiskey out of the same bottle? Do you put your lips to a bottle and let someone else drink out of it?
I am not a fucking savage, right?
Then
I don't
why
drink
the fuck are
whiskey
you
in a
sharing a
bottle.
social media profile with someone when you can inherently make your own, and it's free and it only takes like 2 minutes?
So that can be summed up. This is a great conversation, and it's a really long one, but I think we're kind of diverting off of where we are. One team, one fight. My wife and I present as one. We've been a team for forever,
Okay.
and we have realized that um, we are better when we present as a team, because people get brave when there is a line, right? So there's Jill, and then there's me, and there's two separate entities. People get brave and they talk to, this over here, they talk to her, or they talk to me, where they don't have that same bravery to talk to us together. if they know that we're both together and we see all the things and we share all the things, a lot of those the
I'm gonna
the
spend my
move the
day
movement
ripping
in,
up your
right?
fucking Facebook with just random comments.
Okay, just be careful because Joel hop on there and freaking she'll give you what for. And I'll sit back and I'll laugh and let her have it. But
Do I have to say I'm directing this to Ian and then I comment it?
well, if you look at our post, right? We put a little, dash Mister or dash Mrs.
Yeah.
So when I post something, like I'll identify that this is me talking, and she'll do the same thing with when it's her, right? But the whole point of that is to present ourselves as one entity because I mean that's what we are. We're one team, one fight. We're together in life. And that's one thing I tell people. You know, don't ever say anything to me that you're not okay with my wife knowing because we share everything. She's the one human being on the planet that gets every single part, piece, ounce, aspect of anything. She's it. She's the only human that gets every thought, feeling, anything, all of it. She's the only one, and vice versa. So that's why we are one, and that's that.
I'm still thinking like you're at a restaurant with your wife and the guy goes, "Would you like to hear the specials?" And you're like, "Sure." And he's like, "We have a pea soup and a clam chowder." And then you're like, "I'll take the pea soup." And she's like, "I'll take the clam chowder." And then they just come over with a bowl and like half is pea soup and half is clam chowder. But it doesn't mix. It's just like perfectly half and half. And like, well, this side's mine and that side's yours.
No, because we'll get the one bowl of each, but then we eat from each bowl. so
There's
I'll
the
eat some
thing
of the
though,
clam chowder. She
you're
eats some of the
you
soup. So we
still
share that
have
shit.
two separate things though. So you could just do the same thing. If you created your own Facebook, she created her own Facebook, and then you just have the passwords to each other's to log into each other's stuff to check to make sure nobody's flirting around or nobody's offending each other. But I do get your perspective and I actually very, very respect it as well because it is a sense of unity which you do not see with a lot of people, even in marriage, where the whole idea is that you're supposed to have unity. It's supposed to be you two together stand strong. You're more powerful together than you are apart, like the Wonder Twins. But the issue is, still thinking of the soup thing. It's fucking funny to me. I swear to God, we can make a bit out of that. I'm telling you, you sharing a soup and half is pea, half is clam, and then it's not. It's like Moses is in the middle, like parting it a little bit. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
there's two walls, but it is a sense of unity which I can respect because it is a thing a lot of couples don't really do when it comes to they don't think that some people think that like, oh, it's social media having separate accounts is nothing. It's like, but it's also kind of like having separate beds. It might not seem like something, but then after a while, you realize there's a disconnect. You know what I mean? After a while, when it comes to separate beds, eventually you want separate rooms. When it goes to separate rooms, sometimes it moves to separate homes. You know what I mean? It's that fear aspect of losing the closeness to it. And I think when you can stand together and have those ideas of like, we should need to share this, we need to have this, and we need to keep this like this because it keeps us more connected than we will be if we had separate accounts, because that would actually push us farther apart, which is where I can respect. And that's coming from someone that doesn't have a wife, doesn't have anything like that. So the idea that I can understand that perspective without having that is the idea that people can have that perspective on anything when it comes to an idea of why someone has this way. At my work all the time, I see somebody come in wearing a Trump mask, just a giant Trump on their fucking face. And I look at them like, nice mask. No, whatever. I don't care. I'm not a Trump supporter, but I'm going to compliment your mask if it's done correctly. You know what I mean? You could say Biden on it. I'll say nice mask. It's an idea that people want to be spoken. People want to have their thoughts and they want to have their emotions. And when someone tells you you can't say those things or someone gets mad at you for saying those things, it immediately becomes an offense onto who you are as a person, saying they're immediately labeling you and not liking who you are without even getting to know you. Just because a person has a thought. If you sit there and say, whatever, Pepsi's the best drink in the world. And I sit there and I'm like, I fucking hate Pepsi. There's a Pepsi bust that killed my whole family. Like, I'm going to have my own perspective of why I don't like them, but I'm not going to sit there and label you as a person I'm never going to want to talk to. No, I'm just going to be like, well, he has a strong view of Pepsi. And like you said, we shelf it. You don't even have to shelf it. You can just like hey, we have other things we can talk about. It's what really gets me about sports talk. I always hate it when I see somebody in like wearing like a Ravens jersey or a Reds, whatever you want to call it, whatever they're called now, Steelers jersey, whatever, and they start just having this like you see them one time with that jersey on, you talk about sports, and every time you see that person, even when they're not wearing it, it's always sports talk. I'm like, oh my God, there's other things you guys can connect about, but you found the ground of what gets you guys both kind of that open door to interaction. But now you're not even going into the house. You're staying at the door. You're still it's like you're knocking, the door opens up with the football conversation, but then you stand in the fucking doorway and you never truly let that turn into anything because you never know if that person's gonna have more in common with you or less common with you. Next thing you know, you're at only time you can ever hang out is at a football game or something.
But I think that's okay. And let me explain that because I if we think that we're going to have wide open intimate relationships, and when I say intimate, I'm not talking sexual, I'm talking, to be invited into somebody's home mentally and emotionally, is a big deal, and that relationship becomes intimate, right? If we're look to have these kind of intimate relationships mentally and emotionally with everybody, dude, that's not a
I
thing.
never said
So
getting that
yeah,
relationship
but
mentally and emotionally with everybody.
well, no, but you're talking about the sports conversation and being at the door. We don't go in and we don't talk about other things. Well, you know what? That's we need to be okay with that. We have friends that we just talk sports to. We have friends that we just talk politics to. We have friends that we don't talk about home life with everybody. We don't talk about certain aspects of that with everybody, right? So if that's our thing, then that's okay, and we need to be okay with that being a thing. If we look to have these deep, 7, 8 layer deep conversations with everybody, we're going to get into some garbage. We're going to get into some stuff, and we may be able, you and I individually may be able to handle discussing differences of opinions with these people, but these other people's aren't. They aren't, and
That's
that
the
might
point I'm
take
trying
a.
to make is that we
But
need to
why?
we
There's no
need to
point to.
we need to be more comfortable with the idea that you're not going to agree. We all know that we're not going to agree with
People say the
everybody
same
on the
thing.
face of the earth, but the idea that you're going to have these false relationships with people where it's just like, oh, hey, Jim, it's like you realize you built up
Are they false or are they just shallow?
I would consider them false connections because once you truly start to find out who that person is, you realize you don't like that person. It's the same reason why people that are couples, they move in so quick together without getting to know the person, because for so long when you're dating, you're putting up a persona of who you are. And then when you get married, you turn into who you really are. You're like, "Oh, I can let my fucking guard down." That's the issue is that everyone's walking around with their guard up and not being open about stuff. It's like you need to kind of figure out like, okay, what's this person about? But don't get mad when you find out it's somebody you don't like. You don't have to get outraged. That's the part is that what I agree with is with you is on the factor of, yeah, it's going to be hard to try and connect with everybody on this personal level. But people get more upset when they find out who a person is or who they really are rather than being like, well, that's that person's perspective. That's the issue is when someone finds out, oh my God, like you're a Trump supporter, you're all these crazy things that is deemed bad. It's like instead of saying that person's a piece of shit and then talking shit on them on a social media platform or just going off talking about them to other people, be like, that's that person's perspective. You don't have to sit there and text them every single day of how they're doing, but it would be the same case scenario as if you saw a dude who you knew was an asshole in your town and his house caught on fire. Would people just sit there filming it and watching it and laughing at this man that's about to lose everything you've ever loved? Or would you look at it like, hey, I'm going to help you out because even though you are, in my opinion, an asshole, you're still a person. You still boil down to these necessities and these things that actually connect us. There's an issue, like I've always used the example, at least a lot now recently, is the idea of $1 billion over somebody's life. It's there are a lot of people that I could say I don't like. I don't just there's some people I'm like, but I'm not gonna go out of my way to be an asshole. I would help them if they needed help. You know what I mean? There's this base scenario of I don't really have a lot of enemies. I've been, I've had bad conflicts with people, much like probably you have. You come across someone that just seems like they have something else going on in their life and they're taking it out on you. But I would never want them to die. How many times as a kid where people are like, I wish they would just die. I wish that even I was bullied really bad in school. I'd be like, I wish they would just die or wish something it, in the grand scheme of things, when you start to understand That's the shallow end thinking. That is what you would say, yeah, that's shallowness. You need to understand that we're more connected. There's a lot about us that is love between everybody. An idea that, like, I initially 100% think that if you had your house burned down right now, knock on wood, I hope it doesn't happen. All that whiskey behind you, it might actually happen, depending on if you're smoking cigars in your room or not.
We're not allowed to smoke in this room.
Okay. But the idea that somebody that you don't like, that maybe you had a disagreement with, or someone that you might have been like, oh, screw you, whatever, and then you haven't talked to them again. If they saw you crying, saw you on your knees watching your house burn, I don't think anybody in the world, unless you are truly an evil fucking person, would sit there and just laugh at you. I think they would be like, "Hey, do you need some help?" It's the same reason, like, you can get into an argument with someone and then someone dies. You don't sit there and they say, "Don't speak ill of the dead." I've heard so many people talk so good about people that I knew they hated after they die because they're not around anymore. They just felt like, oh, it's that feeling. It shouldn't take death to make you realize that, like, oh, these little petty arguments, these little things that you get into, these little spats, these little things. You're mad at the moment, but you're not you don't cut off the ties, even with people that are like all this. I have plenty of people that have reached out to me later in life that bullied me in school and was like, hey man, I'm really sorry about all these things. And it's like this whole relief thing. I spent so much time going against John Hopkins, you knew about this, to get my medication. And then finally, when the last trial comes and we get on the phone with the law office, the guy goes, tell Mr. Robertson that we're sorry. All my anger, anything I could have sat there and cursed him out, it was gone, because of the idea of, what the fuck am I going to hold on to with the anger when we could just move past this and do what needs to be done, what I've been trying to do for so long? I'm not going to hold that bitter and resentment into my heart. And I believe people choose the bitter and resentment. They choose to not make connections because of the fear of, like, making an enemy and making things. And I'm like, initially, I do not think I don't think this should be the way of communication now. I think that we need to find a better form of getting in close with people, not just having that sports talk, but also getting to know who that person is a little bit too, and understanding that even though we're going to disagree on most things, we still have some things that are in common. And it doesn't just boil down to sports, because people stop at that door. They don't go any farther than that to understand who that person is. I've had sports talks with people, and I'm like, I really don't like this guy that much. And then someone it's happened in high school. Someone, his, I think it was his brother or his sister died. And I was there. I was like, hey, if you need to talk, I know we just usually talk about the football game and stuff like that, but let's talk if you want to talk. You know what I mean? It's that idea of, like, I wasn't going to cut that off just because I just didn't like that person. It was an idea, like, you understand that we, us building things up together rather than just working separately, we're going to be way more effective if we all come into a unity and not just fight over very, very, very small stuff like fucking PETA shit. Like, it doesn't make sense to me that we're like I said, we're disclosing our progress. We're not moving forward. We're only fighting each other and really just tearing down everything that we're building. Some things, like the ideas and morals of what happened in the 19th century to where we're at now, there's good stuff that we evolve from, but we're also fighting over really simple shit. Like, you're an Android and I'm an iPhone person. Like, that's simple, stupid shit that shouldn't even be a battle, but it is a battle.
If you let it. And I kind of want to reach back for just a sec, because the one I like the point that you're making about being open and intimate and getting into those less than superficial conversation, or more than superficial conversations with people. The one thing that we run into, the struggles that we have with that, is number one, time and energy. And there has to be a decision. Is this person worth my time? Is this person worth my energy? Because not every human on the planet is. They just aren't. There is such a discord where you may be able to talk sports, but we talked about those 20 million things, right? Sports is the one thing you two can talk about, but the 19 million things you can't. So is that person worth the time and the energy? And that answer might be different for everybody. That might be yes for you. Every human being is worth the time and energy. But the way I view that is, I only have so much time and I only have so much energy. And if I'm spending time trying to find a connection with this person who we have a lot of dissonance and we have a lot of discord. uh, I'm taking that time away from somebody else uh, who can benefit from my relationship with them more, and I can benefit from them more, right? And it sounds selfish. It does. It
No, it
absolutely sounds
doesn't.
selfish. Like
I agree. I
I'm
agree with
I'm
you.
only going forward, looking for people that can benefit me. No, that's not what I'm saying. But people who are going to make my life better, right? Their presence is going to enhance who I am as a human. Those are the people that I need to spend time on. I'm not going to stop talking to everybody. That doesn't mean I just shut off everybody else that's not in my tiny little circle. That's bullshit, right? I'm not an isolationist. I'm going to talk to everybody. But if I meet that person where we've got one thing and 19 million not good things, I'm going to set that person off to the side. And if I see them, I know that we can talk sports. Hey Joe, how's that game this weekend? And that's where that's going to stay. It's
I,
just going to sit there. I'm not going to do anything. But this other person, Rob with two B's, I'm going to call him because I like talking to him. I like hearing about his family, and I like hearing about his crazy shenanigans and the awesome people that he meets on a daily basis. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm going to spend that time and energy. My family, my kids, my wife.
I agree
You
with
know what
you.
I'm saying?
I think what I was trying to explain was like when you're at work or something, somebody like not looking like, oh, I met this person in a store and we talked over sports, but we have nothing else in common. I'm going to keep trying to hang out with this person to get to know them better. But if you have people in your everyday life that you see on an everyday basis that all you do is talk about sports, was the point I was trying to make. You got to open up that door a little bit more. Like if you have people that are around your work that you work with, like I worked at a hotel. Everybody always talks sports talk, but I wanted to dig down deep farther than that because I was going to meet these people every single day, and I didn't just want it to revolve around sports. There had to be other things we can talk about, other things to getting to know, relationships to make out of that. You know what I mean? It doesn't just need to be a random person you meet in a grocery store once and you'll never see again. More on the idea of if you know there's people in your environment around you and you're avoiding them, you're finding ways not to get to know them any better when you know you're going to see them every single day, but you're okay because you're holding on to the one life vest, which is a sports talk life vest. Then you should move on past that. You should try and find something deeper and get to know this person even more. You might not like what you find, but it doesn't mean you would initially cut off this ties or be emotionless if something bad happened in their life, which is the kind of the point I was trying to make.
And I get where you're going with that. I totally see that. Where what my brain takes me is I look at my work environment and I think to myself, I go beyond sports, right? So for me, it's parachutes. I work with a lot of engineers and parachutes. Um, so like our common ground is parachutes. We talk about parachutes and operation and all how they work and all this other crazy stuff. Um, if we go beyond that because of and we dig into that deeper part of it, our professional life, the reason we're there, right, parachutes, can suffer because we went further. Now it
Do
and
you
I know
think
that
that somebody would let you die
yeah.
if you got on an airplane and
No,
put
no,
that?
no, no, no.
Okay.
I'm not talking about jumping, right? We're not talking about skydiving. We're talking about just parachutes, construction, and engineering. Let's talk about that for a sec, right? In that context is where I'm at, right? And we do parachutes really, really well. So, but if I get into that, we take that outside of the parachutes in the professional realm and we start going in, we find that we are morally and ethically, not ethically, that's a bad one. Morally, our morals and value system is completely incompatible. We are two very different sides of the spectrum. That has the opportunity to impact our professional life. Now, for me, I can put that away and I can say, no, we're just doing parachutes. You know what I mean? I get it. You believe this, and this, and that's counter to what I believe, but I'm going to put that away. But what if they can't? Right? And now that point, they're unable to make that personal professional break. And there's a lot of that in the workplace now. We're not able to put away our differences in the workplace and perform the tasks that we're there to perform and do our job. Not saying you or me, but it exists and it's there. If somebody is deemed to be even though they might be the best, parachute maker in the world, but they're morally, uh, right of center from where you are, they're now an entity that has to go or that's incompatible to work. We were making great parachutes beforehand, but we're not now. Why?
I think the point I was trying to make here was, even though I have people, or I know people that I work with, where I'm like, oh my God, like this person's just evil. Like they're just crazy. Like they're so manipulative. They're always misconstruing. They're always taking hours from other people and stuff like that. And they're doing it on purpose because they want to hog it all and they want all the glory for themselves. Doesn't mean I would want to, I would definitely not be happy if I heard that this person lost their family in a car accident. You know what I mean? I would look at
Right.
that. Well, hold on. Let me get to my example here, Ian. I'll let you talk. You're on my show, fucking coming in here. No, I'm just kidding. But an idea that, like, I feel like that should be like that with everybody. Like people sit there and say, like, I heard some dude say that he would love to read an obituary about Trump. He would love to read an obituary about Biden or something like that. And I'm like, I don't hate anybody enough to wish that on anybody. I don't have any, like, if I saw even people I don't like in my life or something, if I saw something bad happen to them, I would be there to help. And I said, that's,
Rush Limbaugh.
yeah, I don't really know who that guy is, to be honest with you. I know he's like a commentary
You're a
guy for,
podcaster, man. Come on.
I knew like he's
Rush
involved in it.
Limbaugh.
I know a lot of people hate him and a lot of people are happy that he
He
died, but at the
died.
same,
He died yesterday. Yeah.
I know, but at the same time, I look at that like I'm not, I don't have as much hatred as other people where they look at that and they go, "Fuck this person, fuck that," after he's dead. I'm like, "No. No. It doesn't, it's a life. It doesn't matter if it's the worst or it's the best. You don't do that. You don't, you gotta have a sense of initial care, which I think a lot of people have, but we choose to neglect it. And if you develop a connection where you want to see someone lose everything, lose their life or something, like you, I wish that person was dead. That's what I'm trying to get to, is that
Hatred.
conversation, it's that you shouldn't have that. There's, life is too short to have that over something like that. And then to have that shallowness where you will talk shit. They don't say speak ill of the dead. Don't fucking do that. You don't want to see somebody suffer. I want to get to the point where even though you guys only connect over sports, but you hate everything else about the guy, you're still, when the dude's house is burning, you're not gonna just be like, fuck you. You're going to try and help. It's a sense of empathy, is what I'm trying to get at here. It's not,
Sure.
it's a sense of care that we all have initially about one another, because I think as together we work better than we do apart. It's the same thing with you and your wife having the same Facebook. Together you guys are stronger than you are apart. It's the same thing as people. Together we are stronger than we are apart. Abraham Lincoln talked about this. A house divided cannot stand. It's the same aspect of shit. You got to work together to succeed. We keep shooting each other in the foot and creating more potholes and more restrictions for everybody, when it's going to cause less communication and more fear than anything. And we're never going to grow. We're never going to succeed if we keep up at this point. We have to find a way to talk without getting so angry at each other. We have to find a way to talk and be humans. There shouldn't be a race idea of things. There should be, as we're a species. We're one giant species. Again, if anything, we should be fighting bears, because those things are fucking awful. But it's that idea. People say white, black, Asian, whatever the hell it is. It's white man's got to pay, all these other types of things. We're people. And I know that's like, oh, yeah, I've heard that before. It's like, but it's true. We're people. We're a species. Amongst other species, we have overcome and been the top one. So let's talk about, if we can understand that there's dolphins are different than humans, then let's look at the fact of, why are we going to fight in our own groups? Dolphins know that. Dolphins, they have different accents based on whatever part of the region that they're in. There's different pods of dolphins. They have different groups, but they don't sit there and fight each other. Even if it's a different pod of dolphins and another pod of dolphins, they don't fight. They just don't communicate, or they communicate and they just have this passerby type thing. We're not doing that anymore. We're not stopping there. That's why I want to develop more in past the sports talk. It's because we can't even function doing that properly. We rather fight with people based on something that we read about them, rather than choosing to understand about who they are and their perspective of things. And that's the issue that I'm talking about. That's the issue, that you're never going to evolve as a society if you can't even, the same species as you can't even live with. You can't even have a simple interaction with, without it turning into a fight, without it being afraid to know who somebody is. It's this fucking weird idea that just because somebody looks different than you based on skin color or based on whatever, that you want to sit there and not talk to them, or you don't want to associate with them because they have their political views, all these other types of little goalposts we put up between us to find ways of not to interact with this person. It takes more time to do that than it does to try and understand a person. You know what I mean? it's this weird conflict. I'm not saying you or me. I'm just saying there's people out there that do these types of things, and it boils down to we're people. We're all living on this earth together and we're trying to survive. And in the grand scheme of things, this earth is pretty huge, but also at the same time, it's pretty small compared to the galaxy, compared to all the solar system out there, as compared to all these other types of things that we can't even visualize because it's just impossible for our human eyes to do so without technology. And when you get to the point of you realize, calculate all the number of people that live in your state, calculate all the people in your state compared to all the people that live in the country, compared to all the people that live in the world, you start to realize your number is really small. So the idea that you're going to sit there and have conflicts with all those people or all these people or all those people, it's just it's a dumb way of thinking. It's not going to prohibit growth, and it's shooting yourself in the foot. And I'm going to keep going back to that because I believe that's what this whole cancel Facebook thing is kind of. We're starting to realize that we're just feeding into a system that we know is going to take our money. We know it's going to keep giving us the same result of you lost, you lost, you lost. And it's like a gamble of like the chance of there's that 0.001% chance you might win. Probably not. What happens if I told you there is no percent chance you're going to win? It's a 100% chance you're always going to lose because the machine is rigged. That would change the perspective for a lot of people. But a lot of people think there's that glimmer of hope that there is that goodness. There is that 1% chance you're going to win. And that's why they keep feeding into it, feeding into it, and feeding into it. And it just grows bigger and stronger. And you just stay the same. You're not evolving. You're not progressing. You're not upgrading. You're just watching this thing surpass you to a point where you're never going to be able to touch it. It's basically going to become God.
I think it already has, and I think that's the problem. I think it's become there's a certain level of dependence that we've established on this little thing, and I think it's already there. And we see people catering to and bringing sacrifices to the altar of Facebook. That's a thing. These people, and you hinted at the social media Illuminati earlier, which is probably true. There's now whether or not they're having meetings and Zuckerberg's wearing a robe. I don't know about that, but um, you know, uh,
Cross yourself.
there
Cross yourself.
probably is a network. You know what I mean? Like that. There's those things there. Yeah. Well, just us saying it, I mean, it's probably going to get us freaking shut off. But anyway, no, and we're super angry right now. We're super confused, and as people, right? And we've been algorithmed into echo chambers, and this is the part of the issue is with these algorithms to make us see more of what we like has caused terrible division, has caused terrible freaking polarity between groups. And that's where I on our Facebook we have very, very deep left leaning friends, and we have very, very deep right leaning friends. So we have our algorithm completely confused. So we get to see everything. And that's very intentional because we want that balance. We want to be able to see everything and read everything. So we're not just pigeonholing ourselves into this side of whatever the algorithm decides we're in. And but we as a people have been algorithmed into these groups, and we don't realize it. We're realizing it now. We're kind of coming into that realization that a computer program has force fed us this information that we then have espoused and taken on as our own, and that's divisive. Diversity is beautiful. I fucking love it. And I don't want to make us just one human race. I love the fact that we have different ethnicities and cultures and all this other stuff because they just bring more to the freaking table. There's more life and experience, and that diversity is fucking beautiful. We have so much experience and culture across the globe in different aspects, and how we view life and how we view existence. And goddamn, let's keep that. Come to the table, share that with me. Let me share mine with you. What does a Tuesday look like to some kid in freaking Nepal? I don't know. Share that with me. I'm going to tell you what my Tuesday looks like. Yeah, and utopia is not a thing. Utopia will not happen. It's not attainable. It's not real. Somebody's going to lose. Somebody's going to, you know what I mean? That is, if that is the pursuit, then we're fucked up. And we're going to spend our lives upset because we can't attain utopia, and for us to try to legislate our existence into utopia is bullshit. Stop doing that. That's not a thing. Looking at that smaller circle that you mentioned, that's where we're going to have the impact. I'm not going to change my state's way of thinking. I'm not going to change my counties. There's over 1.5 million people in Middlesex County, right? I'm not going to do that. But you know what? I've got 10 neighbors on either side of me here that we can sit down and we can have a conversation with, and I can get to know their story, and I can get to know their life and their experiences, and I can share mine, and we can create this thing. And that inertia is going to be what happens. We need to be okay with impacting a person, two people, three people. These kids are going out there and they're trying to, these influencers, right? They're trying to have an impact on the world tomorrow. Well, that's fucking dumb. Be okay with changing the world for 10 people, not a million. And by the way, your followers, that's not you changing the world, right? That's people just liking your shit and paying attention to
But
what you
I'm a
say.
prophet. I'm a prophet.
Right, right. You're gonna make some money, and that's fine. That's
No, I
fine.
meant
Like,
I'm a prophet from the
I'm
Lord.
uh, yeah, right, right. But be okay with that, you know. And that's the thing is like they're not okay unless they've got this cult following of a shit ton of people. You know, that one person that reaches out to them and says, "Man, Rob, you changed my life."
Don't fucking tell me that. You're
Right?
gonna
That
inflate
should
my
be
ego.
enough. That
No,
should be enough. That one person should be enough.
no.
And then you should be, now doesn't mean you stop doing what you're doing. You keep doing what you're doing. But if nobody else the rest of your life
I
doesn't give you
want
that
all the
validation,
followers. I
yeah,
want all of them.
right on.
Give me
Of
your
course,
stack of coins. I want your stack of coins.
and my coins and their coins too. Yeah,
It's an
no, I got
issue
you. But that's
because everybody now is thinking that everything, like I don't know how many, like I just spent the past couple of days looking at recent podcasts, like hashtags, like people that would just recently put up a post and have the hashtag podcast, and everything's like tools to change your mind. It's like these new revelations they think they're coming on. It's like it's things that I've said, things that other podcasts I've heard say way, 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 way before. We all think on the same ideas, and we think as soon as we create something, or as soon as we say something that it's new and unique to us, if somebody else has probably said it a while ago. We're all thinking on the same basis of things. We all just are hitting different frequencies, and I feel like a lot of us get onto the same frequency, but a lot of us choose to fall off of it. You know, you are who you are. Your idea that you're better than anybody else you're going against is wrong. We're all at the same level, no matter if you're an Elon Musk or no matter if you're just a random homeless person on the street. You are, in the eyes of the world, in the eyes of this thing that you live on, you're the same exact person. You're at the same level. There's no intelligence IQ that's higher. The earth doesn't care about that. You know, you think a giant being that created you is going to love you more because you have more money or you have all this? No, they're going to look at you just like all the other ones he's created. You're the same thing. You're the same. You have a unique story, sure, but you're not worth any more than that life. And that's why one life isn't worth more than another life. Even if that life has been beaten down the rubbled path of committing crimes and doing all these horrible things, it's a life. You need to understand that. And even that, yeah, that's not rationalizing. Oh, are you rationalizing Hitler? No, but it's still a life. It's the same idea when somebody goes to war and they're like, "Why don't you ever talk about the war?" It's like, why would you want to talk about? Because in their minds, it's okay. Killing is okay because it's the enemy. That's what they tell you. It's the enemy. But if you really boil it down, you're killing another person, and that's when you see the perspective of all these people that are against the war. It's because they see that. They see that, oh my God, you're killing, yeah, whatever reason that we have. Oh, we have to protect our country from this and this and this. But it's another person. And in their mind, and here's the biggest thing, when I was watching all those Pearl Harbor documentaries, I'm like, oh my God, these people are fucking horrible. It's like watching Lone Survivor where you like want to join the military right afterwards. But then if you look from their perspective in their country, do you think Japan or whatever thinks the same way that we do about Hiroshima? Like, hooray! Like my grandfather put that in the best perspective for me. I'm like, oh my God, like we bombed them. Yes. We like when I first was learning about this kid, like we fucking won the war. We showed them. My grandpa just goes, no, we didn't show them. He goes, because what might be a great day for us in our history, to them, it was their biggest nightmare. And it's sunk in deep with me where I'm like, man, that's like when we talk about 9/11 over here and then they talk about 9/11 in another country, they don't give two shits, but it means a lot to us here because it's something that was in our country. It was an attack on us. It was a hurt to us. People lost lives. You know, it was it's more personal to us, but to them, it's just another thing. And it's like understanding that perspective doesn't mean that they're right, we're wrong, or we're right, they're wrong. It's an idea of like, these conflicts that we get into, there's always a side. There's always a side. There's always these things. Don't choose a side. Understand the other side. Understand that whole thing. Come to conclusions rather than coming into arguments. It's very easy to say and it's very hard to do. But I'll never forget when my grandpa put that perspective into my head of like that's their worst day. Hiroshima, all those things when those are happening. And you get to see it in the Wolverine movie. I hate to fucking quote a Marvel movie in it, but when those bombs are dropping and you see all those guys pulling out the swords and stabbing themselves in the stomach because they knew their life was over with. They'd rather die by their own hand, an honorable death, than die by a bomb. The one dude saved the guy, Wolverine saved the guy from stabbing himself and threw him in the well and then saved his life by protecting him from the bomb, even though he was sent there to kill those people over there. But it was an idea of you're human. You're a person. You're a species. You're not this side and that side. As much as the world wants to think that, we're never going to find world peace. It's never going to happen because we always need conflict. But if we can start by understanding that you're a country, I'm a country, instead of even if it's so shallow as to find an agreement of we both need to tackle down. That's why aliens. We both need to kill aliens to come together as a community for a little while until this problem is dealt with. Do that, but you need something to unite you because all you're doing is tearing each other apart based on where you're from, what you look like, and all these other things. What your wealth class is, what your ideas are. It's the stupidest thing. And all it does is cause more destruction rather than it does to call building up. And I know somebody out there is like, you fucking communist or whatever the hell it is, talking about whatever. I don't know what, I don't even know if it's a libertarian that thinks that way or whatever the hell it is. But it's an idea of stop shooting yourself in the foot. You do it in your own personal life. It doesn't even need to be the fucking world. It doesn't even need to be your street. You neglect taking choices based on sometimes what people will think of you, if you're going to be able to do it, if you're going to embarrass yourself or not. People do that in their everyday life. Why? With how many time is in an average lifespan of 71 years, 56,365 days? Why would you waste a day of that not doing something that is going to only progress your life and hopefully the world?
Because my world's different than your world. Because I see things differently.
Are you
Because
on fucking
my unique perspective is different
shut
than
the
yours.
hell up. Get out of here with that.
But guess what? That's something that we have to understand and we
That's
have to
that.
be okay
Yeah,
with.
but that's
And your view on things is beautiful and wonderful and I love it. And that's great.
shitting on it. Stop shitting on it.
I'm not shitting on it. It is beautiful and it's romantic and it's relatable and something that I think should be adopted and be a thing. But in reality, there's a lot of people that don't feel that way. And
That's what I'm trying to get.
you're going to try to convert them to your way,
No, no, no.
right?
I don't want to convert anybody. I just want people to understand it doesn't always have to boil down to an argument. I don't think initially anybody that you would say thinks that it needs to be their perspective is no, this is what their perspective is. They hate, they don't like this type. I don't think initially, I think that's ingrained into us. That means there's a way to reverse that back to a pure form. It's not an idea of my
Sure.
perspective. It's an idea of you didn't, when you were born, you initially did not hate Japan.
I still
You
don't.
were told and you were flushed. I'm talking about just a random person that might hate Japan.
Okay.
They are flushed with that information because of watching, it's like when I watched the Lone Survivor movie, I wanted to sign up to the military to go fight those people over there. But I didn't understand the perspective of that's how, and what about the mindset of someone that lives in that culture and is involved in that culture? Then after talking to people that are involved in different cultures, you start to realize, oh, we're seen differently than how I see us over here. You see us as this because that's everything you've been ingrained with. There's a way to initially get down to the point where you understand that we're all just people. That's not trying to change anybody. That's the natural way of thinking, is that we're all looking to survive. Am I right? So if we're all looking to survive, why are we trying so hard to annihilate another person that's just trying to do the same exact thing? And that's because everything of how we've gone in society has been affecting us and involving us, all our environmental influences. And I think there's a way to get to a point where, even if it doesn't even fall in the matter of just stop hating, but just on the concept of stop trying to fight, stop trying to tear apart each other on the aspect of you want what they have, or in the idea and the ideology of it's a defense thing. It's a defense thing because they're also doing the same thing, and in their eyes, it's a form of defense as well. Well, who put the idea that we're fighting each other? Who put that idea of we're
The guy
war?
with the gun who's trying to end my life.
Are you
That
giving me an
that's
example?
yeah, that's there. That's real. You know what I mean? So when we talk about this, and this it just and for transparency, this topic is a little tender for me, due to my experiences and my circles, right? Um, so I'm not going to allow that person to end my life, right? What got us there to that moment of conflict? I don't know. Is it for me to know? Is it for me to whatever? Choices were made, things were done, and here we are in this situation. So that person with a gun is not going to listen to me say, "Hey, let's just be humans and talk this out."
No, but
They're not
if we
going.
can,
They're ingrained to execute violence against me for
what I'm
whatever
saying
reason.
is, if you start the ball of not you in that scenario, for instance, but to stop that scenario from ever even being a thought or even being an idea,
But
is
that
to
goes back to the utopia thing, man. That ain't gonna happen.
I know it's not going to happen. I know. I said that world peace is never going to happen unless we come against something bigger. That's why I'm saying aliens. But the idea that that conflict arises and it starts somewhere. Initially, people aren't born with that. I'm going to pull a gun out on you because I hate you so much. There's something else that has brought that person to that thinking. So and I think a lot of that thinking is boiling down to what you see today. Like we talked about on your podcast during the coronavirus thing, there were no shootings, no mass shootings. Then we opened back up, and on Valentine's Day, there was a bunch of killings. It's the idea that something gets you to that point of that happening. I think a lot of that boils over simple, stupid fucking conflicts that we find on social media, stupid things that you see on the internet, stupid, outrageous things that can somehow trigger your anger button and cause you to get to that point. So let's try and find ways to slowly eliminate all those processes. Just like the whole mask thing has become normal. Wearing a mask was in the beginning was fucking ridiculous and was fucking like, oh my God, this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. People are just walking around like it's a zombie movie. Now it's so normal when you see somebody not wear a mask. It's fucking like, hey, put your mask on. You know what I mean? Um, that's because that's programmed into you now. You can take out the programming of social media. You can find a way to stop all these little minor conflicts that'll lead you up to hurting someone like that. And then those scenarios will never happen. It's not creating a utopian idea, it's trying to fix the programmed way that we've gone with the idea that we can just act outrageous in stupid little things where we don't even think of the grand scheme of the situation. Think before you act. Like that whole mind. There's like literally these old mottos of shit that we used to say all the time that literally would help so much in situations today. But we don't even look back at those because all we hear about now is that thing is on fleek. That's YOLO. That's all this other types of stuff. And it's like you forgot, age before beauty, something like that. I don't know, fucking something old like that. Maybe not with that premise because that's a shitty premise, but the idea of like, think before you act, think before you type. Understand that once you see somebody say something, it's not saying that's fact and it's not trying to change their ways. It's an idea that that's that person's thought, which is hard to do when it comes to followers because somebody sees that and they run with it like, oh, it's fact. And they start retweeting it. And you're like, oh my God, you're retweeting horrible things. But it's an idea that why would you waste a second of your time being angry and getting into a conflict that you're going to sit there for hours and hours and even days and maybe weeks just fighting with this random person online that you do not know, thinking you're going to change their perspective? Instead of trying to change their perspective, understand their perspective, you still have your own opinions. Nobody's taking that away from you. Nobody's saying you can't say what you want to say. So stop trying to get someone else or trying to cut down their version of saying what they want to say. It sucks if someone's talking shit on you and you want them to stop. But also what they feel like they need to do at that moment to do whatever. So you should analyze that. Why, what in society is causing someone to act so hateful towards another person? What in society is causing you to do that? And that's the lack of interaction that we have with people. We're in communication with people that we don't even ever are never going to see ever. So it's a lot easier for you to say something to that person that you're never going to meet, never going to have to face. So it's the idea that if we can try and find a way to maybe even loosen the grasp of social media or loosen the grasp of false communication to find a true connectivity. You're going to have a lot more of a heart for people when you're actually walking across them in your everyday life, and you're going to be less, I guess, apt to say something horrible to someone that you have never met and you're never going to meet. So you can't just make a claim justification. It's like when I Googled is Pepsi racist on the thing, and the guy was telling me there was no way there's going to be search results. And there was like 50,000 search results for Pepsi's racist. And I was like, see, you just toss out stuff saying it. And with the amount of words that get tossed out now, they lose meaning. They lose impact. It's like when I say the word fuck. For a lot of people, that's like sharpness to their ears. But to me, it's another fucking language. I just said it in the example, but it's another word of I say it so much that it just has lost meaning. It's like if I keep saying moist, 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 eventually it's going to lose its impact. It's going to lose all that thing. And that's the same thing with these horrible things that we've been saying to other people online. You say things, and for someone, it doesn't mean anything, but for someone else, it means a lot.
Yeah, and the problem with saying things online is that there's this position of safety, right? We have this safety blanket that we hide behind, where I can go and I can call somebody, a piece of shit motherfucker, right? I can type that out with all caps and exclamation points, and I can, yeah, I'm virtually yelling at them and saying this, to where if I was in face to face with that person and I yelled at them in the manner in which I typed that, I would get punched in the fucking mouth, right? And that's the problem, is that there is this perceived safety blanket of people just hopping on there and talking big and bad and wanting to fight. And virtual fights are fucking stupid anyway. Just stop with them. They're dumb. God damn, just stop. Um, you know, uh, but when the primary source of communication is this fucking box that you and I are talking on today, right? That becomes the problem, this false sense of security. And I would be willing to bet that most of the people who are talking big and spreading hate online, grab their ass, drag them out of their mom's basement, put them on at a table, and see if they say the same thing. And they won't. I would be willing to bet that most of them would not. Now, there's some brave souls out there that would. They'd stand up and they'd freaking flex and they'd do their thing. But there's a lot of people, when you get put down face to face in front of a human, and it's no longer a screen with a little fucking picture next to it, right? It's a fucking human. And we're going to say something different. Our tone is going to be different because there's physical threat now. Now there's a physical threat, to where if I say something so offensive and I sin against that person could stand up and actually take physical action that causes me to lose my safety. We talk different when that's the thing. We behave differently when that's the thing. We hide behind this screen. We say shit that we wouldn't normally say, that we would never say to a person to their face. That's a problem. I talked about this on my show the other day. Jordan Peterson, his book 12 Rules for Life is fucking phenomenal. And rule number 10 is be precise in your speech. And if we don't say those ridiculous, egregious, stupid things. We're precise in our speech, and we don't say anything on the computer that we wouldn't say to that same person if they were standing directly in front of us. If we operate off of that mode, I think the language changes a little bit. For some, for there are those that would say the same thing to your face that they say online, and well, just maybe that's maybe fisticuffs is the only way to settle that argument. I don't know, but I think for the majority, if we kind of go along your line, right? We think of Thumper in the movie Bambi. If you can't say nothing nice, don't say nothing at all. Well, we know now psychologically we need an outlet, because if we just repress those thoughts and we shove them down, eventually they're going to boil over, and when they choose to come out could be a very bad thing. So we need an outlet. We need the ability, but that outlet should not be online. That outlet should be you and me. I call you, Rob, I'm having a bad day. I need you to listen to me fucking scream for 10 minutes. Don't say a word. Just let me scream. And I scream for 10 minutes. And then you're like, dude, are you done yet? And I'm like, yeah, thanks. And we hang up the phone, and that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All my bubbles are leveled. All that shit's out, and we're moving on with our day. We need that. That's a thing. But doing that shit online is not a thing. It's not. And there are people that will argue, well, that's the emotional outlet that some people have. Well, if a screen is the only emotional outlet that you have, that's another issue we need to address as a society. If that little box right there is the only fucking emotional outlet you have, we need to fix that. We need to get you into a fold, and we need to get you with people. And maybe it's a freaking, computer users anonymous group or what. I don't fucking know what the right answer is. There's got to be one. Um, but that that's another that aspect of this social media presence in life that we need to address. And it is a practice. It's hard. It's super hard to be precise, especially because, and I mentioned this too, is our communication styles are very different. How I need to talk to you for you to hear me and understand me is different than how I need to talk to the guys I work with. And I can have a different style of communication, and knowing that you communicate differently, and then knowing that I communicate differently. I recently had a bit of a scuffle with a friend of mine who didn't realize my life experiences were different, and I have been taught to communicate in a different manner. I tend to be very direct, and that freaking makes people weird sometimes when somebody actually says something very directly to them, like, I disagree with that. That's silly. A lot of people don't like that reaction, when you have that, and that led to some bullshit. And it took a matter of understanding, like, hey, look, when I speak, this is where I'm coming from. So learning communication is super important, and being, as Jordan Peterson says, being precise in our speech is super important.
We're gonna end on that because we're almost at the 2 hour mark, and I have to pee. Um,
Yes, me too.
thank
Said
you,
you're doing the
Ian.
dance under my desk.
I know that's what I was doing too. Thank you for listening to this episode Out of the Blank podcast, Ian. I will make sure I link all of your links in the description. If you want to tell people where they can find you at, real quick.
I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. Search Y Whiskey. You'll find me.
Good man. All right. Well, thank you for listening to this episode Out of the Blank, and uh, namaste.
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I
I don't
don't.
know how to end this one. This is
Salute.
gonna.
Can I flip you off? I don't. What do we do? I don't know what the
That
right
means I
goodbye.
love you in China, right? Where you flick
There
me
we
off.
go. There we go.